It does.
Hi, I'm Jamie.
And I'm Eva.
And I'm Zuzanna. We have Emily here with us and another Jamie on sound.
We're reading ambassadors at Brigham High School. Our remit is to support our school library in promoting the benefits of reading, i.e. improved grades, well-being, empathy to our peers, families, and local community. We try to encourage greater depth of reading, i.e. more challenging reads, and more diverse reading, i.e. stories that feature people of colour, neurodivergent characters, authors, the LGBT community, etc.
Here at Prêt Radio, we're all about smashing the patriarchy. Just kidding, not. Our previous esteemed guest was a powerful woman, Miss Kelly McIntosh, the head of education for Angus. Last year, we welcomed the first female head teacher in the more than 500-year history of Brecon High School, Mrs. Lawrence. And today, our VIP special guest is another powerful woman, none other than the CEO of Angus Council, Miss Kathryn Lindsay.
Miss Lindsay, it is a real privilege to have our council CEO with us. Thank you very much for coming to Brecon High School. You are a powerful woman in charge of a council. What role would you say reading played in getting you where you are today?
So it's quite difficult, isn't it, to think about the role that a very particular thing has had, and I suppose all of the learning I've done has been really, really important in getting me to where I am today. But reading is a fundamental and important skill, and it's certainly I use a lot in my job. I have to read a lot of stuff, some of it more interesting than others. But I think probably the most important thing around reading for me is that it opens the door to knowledge and a different way about thinking about things. So perhaps gives you inspiration and new ideas of how to imagine the world and how things could be different and maybe what gets in the way sometimes. And that's a different kind of learning than the kind of learning you absorb from the people around you. Yes. So I think it just broadens your horizons is probably the biggest contribution that reading has made in my life.
That's a good point. Would you describe yourself as a big reader? And if yes, have you always been since you were a girl?
Yes, I suppose is the short answer to that. But I think I go through different phases of reading for pleasure. I do read a lot, as I say, for work. So sometimes reading for pleasure has had to take a bit of a back seat in the last few years. I've also done a lot of formal learning and qualifications, and so there's a lot of reading involved in some of that. But I would say that I loved reading from very early on in my life. I used to read books when I was very, 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 very young. Yeah. And my parents were both avid readers, and they kind of instilled a love of books and a sense that books are precious things that you're fortunate to have. And we came very much from a place where there were books, but not just any books that you wanted. I think now I'm in a much more fortunate position to be able to read whatever I like, and but we relied heavily on the libraries and in terms of books that were gifted. So a book was a really special thing to have. If you owned it, you really looked after it. So I would say that that's definitely something that's lived with me. I do remember, though, when I was at school, probably more primary sort of age, I didn't love reading out loud. That was a thing I really, I mean, I did enjoy reading stories in my own head, but I did not like having to read it out loud. And I kind of reflected about why that might be. I think it was probably that my brain went faster than I was able to speak words, if that makes sense. And so I was desperate to get to the end of the story, and sometimes the words got fuddled up when I said them out loud. And I think that put me off a bit. So I think there's a difference in being good at reading and loving reading and being able to read out loud with confidence. These are quite different skills and are both important in different ways.
Yeah, they are.
What is your favourite book or comic of all time, and why do you like it so much?
Oh, now this is really, really difficult because I have read lots of different stuff, but I was trying to think hard about what my favourite would be, and I landed on Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. And I think for me, I just love the magical world that opened up. And I loved the fact that there were more of them. So, you could really expand into that world and just imagine that. Some of the familiarity of the places as well was really good. That was the magical world that Harry Potter opened up has lived with me.
That's really cool. We're going to take a short break just now.
So my favourite book is a book that's part of a series I'm reading currently. It's a chapter book, and it's by Marissa Mayer. Could be saying that wrong, but it's right. And it's called Cinder. And it's a sci-fi version of the Cinderella fairy tale. And the series is based on 4 different fairy tales. So Cinderella, Little Red Riding Hood, Rapunzel, and Snow White. Right now I am reading the one about, what's it called? Rapunzel. But my favourite one is the one about Cinderella, and basically she's a cyborg, and and she's a mechanic, so it's totally different than the Cinderella that you'd think of. But the thing I like is how they link to the stories, because I kind of skipped, I didn't skip, but the parts have little bits of the fairy tales in them, and so the parts have little notes when you say it's like part 2 or whatever, and it has a wee, like, I think it could have been from the original fairy tale, I'm not sure, but I liked how in the Cinder one, well, this could be this is spoiling it. Well, I better not say that. But I like how it notes to the different bits, and how characters are so similar in their ways, but not exactly the same, and how it does the story. But yeah, I really enjoyed that book, and I flashed through it in like 6 days. It was a weekend. I was like, I've got to get back to my book. I was loving it.
You're reading it in maths.
Yes, no, I wasn't. I wasn't reading maths.
English you did for a bit.
Yes, I did. You wanted to?
Yes.
Okay, so now I'm trying to remember which book we're going to talk about.
Theodore?
Should I do chapter book or the manga?
What do you mean?
Because
Okay,
I'll just do manga.
No,
not that one. That one's really good though. So I'm reading this manga. It's called Bungo Stray Dogs, and it's about this orphan child, Atsushi, who can. And in this world, they all have. Some people have different powers, and some don't. Special abilities. But what I find really cool is that the characters are based off of real authors. So you've got Theodore Dostoevsky and Osamu Dazai, Kunikita, and tons of other ones. Also Edgar Allan Poe. He's amazing. And then so the story starts with this boy called Atsushi, who is an orphan, and he's on this side of the river starving, and then he sees Dazai floating down the river. It's really funny. Then he pulls him out and he's like, oh damn, I'm here. So and then Kunikita's shouting at Dazai. He's like, where have you been? Obviously. And then they're detectives, and they are looking for this were-tiger. They're a private detective agency, and they're looking for the were-tiger. But the were-tiger is actually Atsushi, and they don't know that. But then Dazai knows that, so then they go to this warehouse, and then they find out that Atsushi is the were-tiger, and then they invite him to join the armed detective agency, and I love it.
I can see that.
Okay, so my favourite book is one called Between the Lines by Jodie Colt.
Why are you making that sound?
And Samantha Van Leer. I don't really know why I like it. I just really enjoyed reading it. It's really clever, I think. It's about this kind of lonely girl. She's her best friend. And she takes this book out of her school library, and then the prince on the page starts to move and talk to her, and then they fall in love, and they find a way into the book and then outside of the world trying to be together. I just think it's very cool.
So, I don't know if I'd have a favourite book, because there's just so many I've read that I've really enjoyed. But one that I've really enjoyed recently, which is also my most recent read, is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. I think the story was just incredible. The way it was written, just everything about the story, like the whole dynamics of the Republic of Gilead, which is, it's just so incredible, and it like really shows. And like, I hope that people who don't understand the struggles of women in modern society and even in previous like history and stuff, I hope that people can really see what we have to go through and endure, because like the story is just incredible, and I think like you can really empathize with all of the characters that you are introduced to, and it's just incredibly emotional, and just, I don't know, still can't get over it. Read it in like a few days, but it's just incredible. So I think everyone should read it at least once in their lives.
Dystopian, but yet such a lot that reflects the reality for someone.
And it's very surreal in a way that reading it in like, we live a fairly comfortable life here in Scotland, but like you can think that even in like, for some women, especially in like Afghanistan, they're going through that. They're being restricted. They cannot do what they want to do. They cannot own their bodies. So I think that's really a very interesting way of like, being able to connect with those women, but throughout a fictional story, which unfortunately is real for some.
Yeah. Okay, so the next question. Do you have a favourite author, and why? Is it the storytelling or the characters or the subject matter that appeals to you?
So I did find this quite a hard question, but I kind of, a little bit like yourselves, I've read so many things and I enjoy almost everything that I read in one way, shape or form. But I think I go back always to Jane Austen. And I actually read Jane Austen's novels for the first time when I was at university. Part of my first MA involved English literature, so I had to read a lot of books that I might not have come upon otherwise as a result of that. And there was something very attractive actually about being given books that you had to read, because it forced you to look at things that you might not have picked off the shelf. And actually Northanger Abbey is one of my favourite books. So when you asked earlier about what my favourite book was, I almost said Northanger Abbey, because it's right up there. And I think I love the way that Austen critiques the society that she lived in, both in terms of class and the socio-economic kind of status of different groups of people and different families, but in particular how she focused on the role of women and the place of women in society, but yet how she did that with almost kind of an offhandish sort of comedy element to it. It was so ridiculous to her, but yet she was living through those times. It's not like she was looking back on centuries gone by and saying how ridiculous it was. She was living in those times and saying, this is all just kind of nonsense, what we think is important and who we marry ourselves off to and the role of love and all of that. And I just think it was a really brave and insightful way to be writing at that time. So I really enjoyed that. I found the characters were really well rounded, and I just think that she has a really easy knack of telling a story, even although the language that was used in those days was maybe not as accessible as some of the stories we would read now. I still found it easier to read some of her narrative than I did other books of a similar vintage at the time. So
yeah, okay.
Go.
Okay. So are you reading anything currently? Or maybe your most recent read?
So I'm reading a lot of committee reports, which are all riveting to a greater or lesser extent, depending on the subject matter. But I actually have just finished reading a non-fiction book called Eichmann in Jerusalem, which I know you're probably thinking, oh my God, yeah, what is that? But it was written, it's actually The Banality of Evil is maybe the title that people tend to use more when they talk about it. A woman called Hannah Arendt, who who wrote that book, and it's a story really around how, and it's factual. So she's a journalist, and she is writing about her experience watching the trial of somebody who was an organiser of the Holocaust. And so the way she tells that story, and how she reflects on all of the detail that, I mean, it was a really long trial with thousands and thousands of documents, but what she took from it was a really important lesson around how it's not necessarily a great vision and aspiration and wickedness that lies beneath some of the most wicked things that happen in the world. It's a banality, and the things that drive people to do horrendous things are sometimes personal advancement or a lack of empathy and a lack of understanding about what that means for other people. And so I think it was a really, really powerful book to read, particularly because you know of its authenticity and you know of the journey of the author herself. So that was my light reading. Most recently. Yeah, I know.
Sounds interesting. It did sound interesting, actually. Do you have a preferred genre, or will you read any genre?
So I literally read anything, anything at all. And I do remember, so when I was probably about your age, I read a lot of horror. So a lot of Dinar Kuntz, for example. Pretty grim stuff. I don't really know how my parents thought that was a good idea. And then I went through a phase of detective novels, and I love all the Rebus novels and all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, you know, as I said earlier, when I was at university in particular, but also when I was at school, you know, read quite a few classics that I probably wouldn't have happened across as well. And I actually do love that kind of spread as well. I think sometimes, you know, I go on a recommendation from somebody, so somebody will talk about something, I think, oh, you know, I'll maybe give that a go. So I think some people go for particular authors all the time and will always read their books. I'm not quite so bothered about that, but I think so. I mean, I think for me, you know, I did totally immerse myself in the Twilight books and the Mortal Instruments. I know, and Harry Potter, as I said. And I think, you know, partly because there were quite a few of them, so I quite like that. I like something that you can really kind of go down the rabbit hole with. And I think as well, you know, just that kind of sense of imagining the world having so many different layers and the magicality of that.
And the fact that, like, the audience, you have such a huge community surrounding the books as well, that you can connect to others through it. And I also quite like the fact that these were made into films, and so one of the things, films and programmes, some of them, I think one of the things that I quite like about that, you know, whether it's a Jane Austen book or whether it's, you know, a trilogy or whatever that you've been reading around that, is when you watch the film after you've read the book and you see what somebody else's imagination did with that versus how you pictured it in your head. And, you know, I think that's quite interesting, because the way that other people kind of give life to a story is not necessarily the way that you would have done it, and the bits that they emphasise in the films are not necessarily the bits that you would have focused on if you were telling the story to somebody else. And I think that tells me a lot about how we process what we read and how it's really individual. So I think books are much more individual than the film, but I love that kind of compare and contrast that you get to do when somebody makes it into a big movie, and you kind of go, oh wow, you know, I didn't imagine Hogwarts looked like that, or you know. And by the way, when I was reading Harry Potter, I had no idea Hermione was actually a name, so I had to work out a way just to say it to get through the book, so it was Hermione the whole way through in my head. That's what I said. So there you go.
You were there, Persephone?
Shut up.
Is it Persephone? It's Persephone.
Is it Persephone?
See?
That's the thing about reading stuff in your head, because it does not matter. You just have to light on a way that you're going to say it and just
I just read it and I was like, I was on a trip with him. It was like
That's what reading out loud, because the words sound right in your head. When
you say them aloud, it just won't work.
Yeah.
It
No.
doesn't work.
Especially we're doing The Tempest in English.
Oh,
So it's not bad. It's just because it's the Shakespeare. So it's the language and the English that's in it. It's obvious Old English. So it's like it's no, but it's trying to say something that was like but it's trying to read it out loud, and it was always so
takes
funny.
a bit to get your head
Yeah.
into it. But you know what? One of the greatest things about reading some of the really old literature, including Shakespeare, is you realise how many things we say today came from those places.
Yeah.
Yes.
It is.
You know, you
Yeah.
recognise a lot more of it
Yeah.
than you think you would,
Yeah.
because they've just become so commonplace.
Yeah.
And we've no idea where those sayings or, lines came from. They're just
Yeah.
part of our consciousness now.
Yeah.
I think that was really an interesting take on the somebody else's ideas of a movie, because I think it was kind of nice. I just usually get mad at the telly when it's not what I had in my head.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's not how it was supposed to be. That's not right. It wasn't in my head.
I know. But that's the magic of reading, because
Yeah.
it's your imagination that it
Yeah.
triggers.
I like that.
It's the way
important lines.
and
I
you
like that.
and when you picture people and you're thinking they're gonna look like that, and then you watch it like, excuse me, no, that was wrong.
Recognize them from something else, and it just doesn't work.
It just doesn't,
Yeah.
you just can't connect the two
Yeah,
people.
and then when they totally change the order, I don't know if it was a book beforehand, but have you ever heard of Avatar: The Last Airbender?
Yes,
So
watched that.
the animated one,
Yes.
legend, amazing. The live action, why?
Yeah.
They had a TV show to already base it off of, and then they're like, let's change it up a bit.
It should be a law to not make
Yeah.
cartoon things live action. I want to make a law where you cannot make a cartoon live
Yep,
action.
I agree very much.
The Pikachu thing.
Oh dear, no.
And the Minecraft.
Oh, the Minecraft.
Oh,
Don't.
Minecraft
We're not going to go on the
So you
Minecraft.
can't have live action Minecraft,
Oh,
surely.
it's
Yeah.
horrible.
Next year.
It's like terrible
I'm gonna watch it anyway.
Wow.
I'm gonna go watch it anyway for a laugh.
Probably.
But
One of the ones that I always talk about is One of Us Is Lying.
Okay.
There's a character in it, he gives off like bad boy vibes. So I was like, brown hair, dark clothes, moody or whatever. And he was like blonde.
Oh, yeah.
Actor
It's just not where your brain had gone at all there.
Yeah.
No.
dye your hair.
You look more like a jock.
Dear.
But
always talk
on
about
with
that.
the favourite genre thing. Genre. Love those genres. And mine is definitely romance. A year ago I'd be like, ew, romance. Now I'm like, oh, romance. It's my quote. It's like, ew, oh.
If I had to pick one, it would be murder mystery.
No.
It's so
Horror
good.
and murder
No.
mystery
I
together.
can always do a good plot twist.
I hate.
Yeah.
I can't, because the murder mystery is usually in the books. You'll know, but then the characters won't know, and I'm like, hurry up and figure this out.
You have to
This is
read the right
pointless.
ones.
Figure
then.
out.
No, they're just. I don't like it. I can't. I don't like it, and I can't read it. And but with horror, for some reason, can't watch it. Can't read a chapter book horror. Oh, but I can read a comic of it. Oh yes, I can. Thriller, horror, gore. Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I couldn't watch it, but I could definitely read it as well.
Yeah. Because watching it can't jump scare you if you're reading it. Especially if it's a comic.
You're in
You can't
control
just-
of the pace.
Because in a movie it'll be like boo, in a book it'll be like and 1, 2, 3, ha, and then in a comic it's like next bit, like okay,
Yeah.
oh that's me, isn't it? What's the book that changed your life?
So I think the book that changed my life was To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, which I read in secondary school, because it helped clarify my understanding of injustice and the interplay between economic hardship and discrimination and social prejudice. And really thinking about how structural discrimination can thwart natural justice, how it gets in the way of people thinking straight, and how it encourages a lack of empathy and understanding and critical thinking. So I think for me, the importance of the kind of the story around that kind of having moral integrity, and knowing that you need to stand up for certain things, even if it's going to come at a significant cost to yourself. So there's something about bravery in the face of that, and being able to hold a mirror up to people and challenge things that you know to be wrong, even if it goes against the grain of popular opinion. And I think To Kill a Mockingbird, given when it was set and the context it was set in, does that really, really well. But I think that although that lesson in particular was around race and it was around kind of economic hardship, I think that those lessons could be translated into all sorts of other things, and stereotyping, and those same errors of judgment, and those same systemic problems can come up regardless of what the labels are that we're applying to the prejudice that people hold. So we need to understand ourselves, we need to understand where our beliefs about other people come from and challenge that. Critically think about, why do we think that about that group of people, and where did that come from, and what has informed that, and is that fact-based or is it something else? So I really enjoyed that book, and I think that speaking truth unto power and being very clear about your own ethics and values and challenging your own assumptions on things has been something that's really been important in my career, and I expect will continue to be important.
Which beloved character might be kind of annoying in real life?
So we spoke earlier about Hermione, or Hermione Granger. So I think she's so annoyingly right and proper.
That's a good point.
And she has such clarity of thought as well. She always knows the right thing, and she's so smart. She knows what's right and wrong, and she always is very clear about what she thinks needs to happen about things. I reckon A, because I can't spell her name, and B, because she's so good and perfect. That would probably really frustrate me, as much from a position of jealousy as anywhere else.
Always correct people.
Yeah.
I do that. I do that when someone doesn't say something right. Like it's like with, you spell there, and there, and where, and certain words are like plurals and that, and how annoying the English language can be. And if someone says, I always correct them. Like, it's this. Shh, we don't talk about that. But yeah,
good grammar is important though. Can really change the meaning of your sentence if you don't get your grammar right. You do need to watch that. But
okay. Kills off random thoughts.
So definitely, I think it was Hermione, but it's probably more about jealousy than anything else.
So you are now the main character in the last book you read. Who are you?
So we spoke about this earlier. So this was Eichmann in Jerusalem. So I chose to identify with the author of the book, who is herself kind of almost a character in the book. It's not a novel, it is fact, but she talks about herself in that. So I thought, right, I can do that. I would have struggled to identify, I think, with the other main character, other than the fact that we're both bureaucrats, I suppose, by trade. So she was a journalist, as I said earlier, who escaped the Holocaust, and then she chose to go to Israel and sit through the trial of Adolf Eichmann, who was a key organiser of the Holocaust, and he was responsible for arranging a lot of the transportation which enabled the Holocaust to occur. And so reading her analysis of him and his behaviours, driven not by, as I said earlier, any significant ideology as such, was probably the thing that seemed to surprise her most, and probably surprised me quite a lot. But it was more about the desire to progress his career and a sense that he needed to follow orders. And I suppose, what it does is it highlights the need to, very critically consider. Sometimes there are rules in place, they're not the right rules, and we need to be critical in our thinking about things.
Yeah, because this choice is almost natural.
And
if you don't consider the outcome, there would just be something that anybody would do.
What he was trying to do was to do the most efficient job. Is one argument of how you could read that book, and that's why it's the second kind of the subtitle is, if you like, the banality of evil, because it wasn't that he in particular seemed to come across as somebody who masterminded a point in the future through any particular malice, but what he did was contribute to one of the most significant, if not the worst atrocity that humankind has ever witnessed. But yet he did it by doing his job, and that I think is really important, because we work in a world where the way that rules are made and where they come from are influenced by social mores, and what has political credence at any point in time can be driven by good things, but it can also be driven by bad things. So we need to be really clear, if we are enacting laws and we are following processes and we are part of systems, that those systems are not systematically wrong. And I think that's one of the lessons that I would take from that, is always being critical and thinking about the impact of what it is you're being asked to do or mandated to do, and being clear about whether you believe it to be right or wrong.
It's a good moral of a story almost as well.
The main character, in the book I'm currently reading, it's actually a comic on an app called Webtoon. It's basically you find out that you can get web comics online, and I can't actually remember her name, but do you know her name? What is her name? Do you not remember her name? I can't remember. Well, basically that's her. She looks kind of shocked in that picture.
She's quite pink.
Yeah, pink hair. It's very. Very.
The whole thing's got this pink shading.
It does. The whole thing's
very pink because it's like an apocalyptic world.
And she wakes up and the guy's standing. Samuel. I remember his name. And I remember his cat's name.
I love cat.
Here we go. I'll remember her name at like 10 o'clock tonight. So she wakes up in this apocalyptic world, and he's standing there, and
They're on top of the roof of their school, on the school.
Yeah, are they?
Yeah, they're on top of the roof of the school, and she's holding a knife.
Oh, because that's how you.
Because before, I can't remember.
Wait, do you know this? Do you know what happens? How far have you read through this?
I can't remember. But
don't talk. No, you shush now. So it's an apocalyptic world, and she wakes up, and he's there, and
if you cover your
loads
ears,
happens. Loads of stuff. Shh. No. But it's a really good book, and I've barely gotten through it. But the other book I'm reading currently is Prêt, and that's the third volume of the one with the Cinder book. So they're called the Lunar Chronicles, and this one is about Rapunzel, and instead of your classic, your Rapunzel in a tower, she's instead in a satellite, and she's a hacker for aliens.
Okay.
Very simple to understand. Yeah.
But you see, you got to go back to the classics.
Yeah, but I kind of skipped. I looked through the What? I do. With this one, I look through to the next chapter and read the first sentence.
I did that.
I also read the last book page.
I did that once.
But it's only because this one's got prequels.
I think you've horrified some of your colleagues there.
Yeah, but I was just desperate.
Habits.
Because then it makes me more excited to read further. I don't use a bookmark.
More excited, just continue reading.
So it's really good though. She's this great hacker for aliens, and the way they link to the story, to the original fairy tale, is really smart, because it's not the exact same, but it's also not like they've just taken a new look on the. No, that's the point. There's no aliens in any of them, is there? Screw it, I'm going to spoil a tiny bit for Cinder for you. Sorry. Basically, I don't care. Basically, instead of her losing her glass slipper because she's a cyborg, she loses her foot. And it's a whole thing. It's
She goes away then, right?
She don't. She gets put in prison. Yeah.
Nice.
Oh. And then she gets out again.
framed.
Then she gets out again. Woohoo! And has to take an annoying guy called Thorn with her. Unlucky her. But I really enjoyed the books, and I'm not really flying through them now, but I'm laughing because the books slowly get bigger. Like Cinder, good size, but I think. Scarlet gets a bit bigger, and then Cress, it's like that big, and I'm like, okay, this is getting a bit big. Winter, it's massive. It's massive, and I'm thinking, I forgot the Oxford Dictionary right here, and for some reason, even the further they go in the story, it somehow gets bigger. I don't know how they do it. So annoying.
For me, it would be Liesel Miminer. Miminer. That could be wrong. It's German. I probably shouldn't have said that out loud. I'm not going to talk about the book I'm currently reading because I don't like it. So I decided to talk about the last one I read, called Book Thief. So I would be a girl.
That was a great book.
I loved it. It was amazing. Took me a while to finish it. Very long book, and I didn't read for a bit. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. A little girl that steals books, so I quite like that.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a really powerful book.
Yeah, amazing.
If you could have dinner with a character from any book, who would it be? I know where this.
So tricky to say Jacob out of Twilight. No. So aside from that, I would say seriously, Moll Flanders. Moll Flanders was a character in a Daniel Defoe book.
Okay.
Again, it's a classic, so it's not necessarily the easiest book to get into.
Yeah.
I read that at university and I loved that book. And I think Moll Flanders as a character, so without spoiling it for you, for those of you who are going to go right out and read it tomorrow, it follows her whole life story, and she is a true survivor, a woman who has been everything under the sun, and who has experienced the great highs and the great lows of life. And the way that story is told really, really gets you into a character in a way that actually some books just don't. There's nothing superficial about it. You really get a sense that you know her, which is quite a strange feeling given it was written hundreds of years ago. But if I could have dinner with anybody, I'd like to chat to Moll Flanders, because I think that her insights hundreds of years ago, though they are probably really, really relevant to some of the problems that we have as a society now. And some of the solutions are probably still the solutions that we should be imposing now and implementing now, that were the cause of a lot of her woes and difficulties all those years ago. So there you go, a little bit of a random one, I'm sure.
What book was that again?
Moll Flanders, a book by Daniel Defoe.
I can't pick one character, because you think, oh, he's kind of good looking, and then you think he's got a terrible personality. Oh, they're okay personality, but they'd be so boring to talk to for an entire dinner. And now I'm just thinking, how about the entire crew from the Lunar Chronicles series? That seems like a pretty good mashup, because you've got Prince. You got a mechanic. This is not spoilers right here. You've got a hacker. It's a description. A joker. Literally.
Anyway.
Yeah, I know. Who else? We got. I don't remember all the characters. But they're all. It'd be great dinner with all of them. But the problem is they all are because there's eight of them. Eight. No. There's 9, technically speaking. But 8 of which are all have got relationships with, so that would be you'd be like a 10th wheel, which would be awkward. But I couldn't probably pick, but that seems like it would be a fairly interesting dinner with the whole group of them. Yeah, Cinder getting off at Thorn and
Probably have dinner with Shelley-Ann from Head Official Lessons.
Oh, Hoshien. I'm good.
Wachong. It's Wachong.
It's a H-U-E.
Yeah, but in the Chinese it's pronounced Wachong. The H is pronounced W. Yeah. Wachong. I only literally learned that last week. For me, it would either be Harry Cameron or Evelyn Hugo from The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I was trying to think of ones, and I'd love to meet Evelyn Hugo, but she was a real person, and Harry Cameron is just like the sweetest man on earth. Yes.
Couldn't he be too sweet and be annoying, though?
No!
Too many compliments.
He's lovely. Not like that.
Too sweet, he's
just everything. He's just genuine. Genuine, good person.
That get boring.
Jamie's like,
You need a plot twist on a dinner.
So, I don't know. I think I like to have dinner with Henry Winter from The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I think his character is very complex in the way, because as a reader, you're only shown like part of the story of The Secret History. And I think seeing it from his perspective, or at least learning some of it, would be really interesting. His decisions and choices, which I won't spoil because they're quite. The spoilers are quite
good choices.
big. But yeah, no, I'd really like to see like what his thoughts were throughout the story, and like why he made the decisions he made, and how he coped with like everything, really, because all of the characters have quite heavy trauma and, you know, just interesting personalities as well.
Yeah.
That's good.
Okay. So, next question is, do you always finish a book even if you hate it?
Yes.
Nope.
Can't.
Nope.
Like a game.
I have
If
some I
don't
need to
it,
finish
I
still,
will
but I'm
hold
Yeah.
the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I do it too.
I stop it.
Compulsive. It just tends to take me a bit longer.
Yeah.
I
Actually, no, I
was.
have done it once.
Which one? It was Pride and Prejudice. I didn't like it.
Oh.
I didn't like it. I felt that it probably would be better in the original version, but I read the shortened one, the dyslexia friendly one, and
We should try it again. But you
Yeah,
can't
shh.
do this.
I've read that one. I've read a couple of them. Yes, but I read it and I thought, this is too quick. She makes up with him too quickly.
She
She
doesn't
has
really.
no complex backstory.
Isn't the
None of her
dyslexia friendly
family's
one
dead.
really small?
She didn't hit any of
Jamie,
the
it's not a
perks.
manga.
It should be.
It's not a manga.
Aren't the dyslexia friendly ones really small?
Yeah, but
So you haven't read the original version?
no, but I just didn't like.
On my shelf. If you like it.
But I didn't like it as much. I felt like the romance, the way it was panned out. I don't know what it was, but they seemed too distant for too long, and then it was like they were driving across the road slowly, and they were totally far away, and then they just totally bashed into. It's like I thought, what? I was reading this and I actually finished. I read like half the book when I was in my bed at night, and it probably didn't help. But I was like,
Just not loving that.
Yeah.
So I did finish it though, but other books I won't. No. I won't
definitely-
finish a book if I don't like it. I can't bring myself to do that. I'd be like, I'm not wasting time. I'm gonna go find a good one. Thank you very much.
Put it off for months and then be like.
That's what I did with Pride and Prejudice.
I definitely would finish it. I have 3 that I know I need to finish, but I want to go back to them.
What do you mean? 3?
Well, yeah. The Secret Garden, which I need to finish.
Oh.
I can't remember if I had another book that I wanted to read more, and then it was the same with another one, because I think I got a new one, and then one that I just couldn't get into. But I know I have 3 I need to finish. In my head. Right, everybody? Is that everything? Okay. Who is the most interesting author you have met? I recently met Sarah Batsford Fraser, where I did an interview on her, and that was really interesting because she was really nice.
So I haven't met an awful lot of authors, not authors of novels. My career and I guess the books that I have had to read through work, I have met a number of psychologists and social policy writers. And I guess the most interesting of those is a man called Dr. David Briggs, who's a clinical forensic psychologist, and whose work in relation to violence against women and girls, and working with the perpetrators of violence against women and girls has been really instrumental in shaping a lot of my intervention when I was a social worker. So he's also a very interesting and kind man who likes hugs. So that's always good.
That's cool.
Yeah. We do.
I like that.
We do like hugs.
He likes a hug.
Yeah.
You could. The way different people think is.
Oh, it's amazing.
How it's so different from other people. Like a psychopath.
Oh,
It's
Yes,
insane.
I find that
was just saying,
I love listening to podcasts about psychopaths.
dive right into the
It's
deep end,
so
why not?
interesting about the way they think. Like, it's insane. I love it. Just
100% agree.
I don't find that
Psychopath podcast.
doesn't make any sense to me. And finally, we've interviewed authors during this year's Independent Book Week celebrations in Montrose and the Angus Book Fest. Have you any suggestions or how else a student group like the Reading Ambassadors might advocate for reading in the community?
So I was giving this a bit of thought, and I think you are doing such a lot of good work to raise awareness of the importance and the joy of reading. I think that's really, really important. So I'd say keep talking about it, keep sharing the love and the enthusiasm for reading, because I think it is infectious. And actually, the gift of reading and that kind of opportunity to lean into your imagination, is one of the biggest gifts that we can give our children.
Yes.
So definitely instilling that love across the community for reading is important. But actually, reading's not something that you tend to grow out of a love for either. Once you've got it, you've got it. Yeah. And I did wonder whether or not there was anything around maybe volunteering at local care homes and reading to groups. Might be something, because sometimes people who are older maybe have lost the ability to read themselves.
We've done with primary school and parent reading and stuff. And we've never done care homes before.
We wanted to. We did think about doing that. We were planning on doing that, but one of the teachers was off that was helping us plan it. So
it's maybe something to think about, because I think you can share your love of reading then with people who are probably lovers of reading, but might not be as able to exercise that themselves anymore. And actually, it's lovely to be able to talk about books with people. So book clubs, if you've got book clubs on the go, and encouraging other people to set up book clubs for different themes.
We've got 5 people in the book club now.
She just started calling us the 5 Booketeers. It was 3, and then we got 2 more S1s. But we've always put on a genre. That was why I read Pride and Prejudice, because it was a classic. Classic was it?
I was in a book club, and I recommended Northanger Abbey, and half the book club didn't finish it. So there you go. I was absolutely mortally wounded. I couldn't understand. It's not even that long a book. Honestly, could not understand how you wouldn't persevere, because I just couldn't get into the way it was written. So most of the things that we were reading at book club was the current top 10 novels. So The Help and things like that were out at the time, and so that was the kind of books that we were looking at, and they were all very good. But and so when it was my turn to recommend it's Northanger Abbey, because I love it, and obviously not many other people felt the same way, which was very sad for me.
The way we do it with our book club is we spin an online wheel, and it picks a genre, and then everybody picks a book from that genre to make it more open, so people can kind of pick their own book to read. And we used to, in S1, if romance came up, we'd just skip it. But now I'm the romance comes and be no, we're staying, we're doing that. Romance, sounds great.
Just took it off the wheel and be
just imagine that one doesn't exist. No. So the other thing that I did think, so community book swaps are really good. So where I say somebody's taken over a telephone box, and that's just now full of books, and the other thing is just a shelf, a shelf in a cafe or a shelf in a shop in the town, or just so that folks can help themselves and put one back. And I think so for some folk, going to the library is not necessarily what they do. So it's taking books to where people are and just making it just a thing that people.
We could do that. The local libraries don't have the books that you would like, so you have to go out and buy them, or go to the place.
I went to one in Arbroath. It was, my mum was going out for something, and I went with her, and we went down to check in the library area of it, check it out and see what it was like. And we went in, and I went into the more adult books in the section, and about 75, maybe 80% of the books were crime. I was
what's wrong with the crime?
So whoever's been ordering's had quite a passion for that.
And I was
the good books,
the bad books. Crime. If they commit crime in the book, I'm happy about that. If they're trying to figure out crime, no. Murder, mystery, no.
Crime, so good.
No.
Non-fiction crime is so good.
Have you guys been to Ingalls Memorial Hall, to the library there in Edsel?
I didn't even know
So
there was
as-
a library there.
So as book lovers, if there's a thing that you wanted to do is see how important reading was in the late Victorian era, you should arrange a wee visit to Ingalls Memorial Hall,
That's a good
where they
idea.
have
Yes.
got an original
Go on a trip.
library with the original books that were gifted to the town. Or the village, I guess, is probably a more apt description. And you can see how they clock the books in and out. It's
That's so
amazing.
cool.
Do they have cards? Do they still use a can, or do they use library cards?
So it's a sort of museum library. You can't.
Okay.
So
Oh,
they're
okay.
there are really old books, but there's a full set. They were bound specifically for the people of Edzell and gifted to them.
Yeah.
And they've got the original kind of
Set up.
yeah. So that it's tiny. I'll spoil it for you, but there's tiny little matchbox kind of things with the number of the book on one end, and then when you take it out, you can see it's got a tiny little book inside, and they wrote the name of who had the book, and then they popped it in and popped it the other way around so you could see it was out. But if you took the little thing out, you could see. So back in the day where there was no computer,
Yeah, they did. That's so
they
cool.
used tiny little, so you could see all the cards in the system, and you could see at a glance whether there were books that were in or
So it's
out.
like an archive but museum style.
Yeah,
so you can't-
yeah. I mean,
that's
yeah. So as book lovers, you should totally go and have a wee look at that. If you can
Do you hear this?
wangle a wee visit
Miss
up
Stewarts,
there.
do you hear this?
We're to have a trip to
Ingalls Hall in Edzell.
to look at their library.
It's like a museum.
Because it's like a museum.
This is very
Also,
you
do you
should
think
do
there's any
that.
other museums that have book stuff in it so we can take a trip to a museum for fun? We'll go to see if we can.
We could go on a library
Oh,
trip.
see,
One
the-
of the
sorry.
best trips that I had when I was in 6th year, and it was actually with the history class that I was in, was down to the University Library at Dundee. I had never seen so many books. It was absolutely awe-inspiring, row upon row upon row. And actually, the history area had a lot of really old books.
Thank you very much for letting us interview you. It was a great pleasure.
Wonderful.
It was
Great to see you.
very nice talking books.
Thank you so
Yes.
much for having me. It's been great fun. Thank you. It does.
Hi, I'm Jamie.